All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Life of Mike. So today we are going to be replacing the swing arm. So as you can see, I've got a bunch of parts that I've received recently and a bike that needs a whole lot of work. So I'm just going to jump right into it and let's get to the build. All right, so my game plan, since I've already got that bolt loosened slightly, I've got the chain removed. What we're gonna do first is we're gonna jack the rear end of the bike up. We're gonna take the wheel off. We'll remove the rear caliper mounting bracket here as well. We'll remove the axle. But before we do that, we're gonna go ahead and loosen up some of the bolts that are used to attach the swing arm. So we'll hit this set up here. We'll hit the dog bone. We'll hit the dog bone mount here under the swing arm, and we'll hit these guys as well, including the pinch bolts for the swing arm. And I did get a special tool from Cycle Gear. This is usually used for axles, I believe, but it has a 19 millimeter end over here, as well as a 17. One end of this bike, I believe, is a 17, the other's a 19, might be reversed one way or the other. But I also bought another 17 and a little Allen wrench set here as well. So I can do a 17 on one side and then the 19 on the other side. Let's go ahead and loosen some of these fasteners here, and then we'll remove the rear wheel. All right, I've got everything loosened up. So now once we get the rear wheel off and we get the bike jacked up, it'll make it nice and easy to remove the swing arm because all the fasteners have already been broken loose. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my stands, get this thing all jacked up, and we'll go ahead and start swapping out the swing arm. Let's do it. All right, so as you can see, we've got the rear swing arm removed. It was nice and easy thanks to the fact that we already loosened up all the bolts. I will still have to remove the shock, but again, the bolts have already been broken loose, so shouldn't be a problem. But this right here is the reason why I was going to replace the swing arm. I wouldn't put any of my own friends, much less my family, on a bike that had that kind of damage. So I want the new owner to rest assured that we did everything we could to make this bike as safe as possible. And I think it's time for a new swing arm. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean up this area back here. We've got some just nasty grit and grime that I could definitely clean up a little bit. We'll take care of that, and then we'll get the new swing arm mounted. So let's go ahead and start the cleaning process. All right, so we've come across our first big snag, and that is I can't get this sprocket off. The splines look like they are rusted together from the sprocket and the external spline coming out of the engine here, so not quite sure how I'm gonna get this guy off. You can see it looks like there's a spacer that's part of the sprocket. I can't tell. I'm not sure if that's a separate spacer or if it's actually fused or part of the sprocket. It looks like it's a separate spacer, but anyways, I gotta try to get that off because I really want to clean underneath here, and I need to get the sprocket off anyways because I need to install the new chain and sprocket kit. So this might take me some time, so I'm going to cut here until I finally have it off or until I broke something. So let's see what happens. All right, well, I'd like to report some success. We were able to get the front sprocket off, and it was definitely not easy. So as you can see, it is really grimy. I'm gonna be doing a lot of cleaning in this area, so the next owner doesn't have the same issue. But what I did was I basically took a piece of wood here, and rather than getting a puller, I don't have a claw puller. I didn't want to go rent one, so I just basically used the leverage off the back of this part of the engine here, and I was able to get enough leverage to pry the thing off, and I had the bike in neutral. So I just rotate the sprocket, pry a little bit, rotate the sprocket, pry a little bit, and slowly but surely it came off. All right, now that I've cleaned this area up a little bit, as you can see, I think I've cleaned this up a lot better than it was before. Still a little bit rusty, but the splines are definitely a lot cleaner, as well as the area around. We've got a few little spots where probably could have done better, but honestly, I'm gonna lube this up once I get a new chain on there, and it's gonna get dirty again anyway. The back looks a little bit better than it did. Sprayed some WD-40, a little bit of the brass wire bristle brush. It's not perfect, but it's better than the white chalky oxidation look. So now that this is somewhat cleaned up, I think we can focus on the old swing arm now, removing the rear shock and anything else we can salvage from it, which I believe we'll be taking the dog bone here. I don't know if this is the dog bone or the dog bone mount, whatever this is called. We're pulling this, and possibly the chain adjuster screws. We'll see what condition the ones are on the new swing arm, but let's go ahead and disassemble this guy and prep our new swing arm for installation. All right, so I've got the new swing arm all cleaned up. It was pretty filthy, but I am really happy about several things. For one, after cleaning it up, it still looked just as clean as I would have hoped. Minimal scratches, minimal wear, and also the chain guide was filthy, and I'm not sure if you can tell on my old one, but it's actually cracked right here. So I was hoping this one would be in better condition after it was cleaned up, and sure enough, it is. It looks great. I could still wipe it down just a little bit better, and I plan to. And I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing reinstalled on the swing arm. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to reinstall the chain guide. I'm going to reinstall the rear shock. And then after that, I'm gonna move on to the rear wheel. I'll get the rear sprocket all mounted up. We'll get the swing arm in place, and then we'll also do the new chain and sprockets at the same time. I got the shock mounted, so I haven't torqued everything down to spec yet. I've just got it, just hand tight at the moment. So I'm gonna go ahead and mount it back to the bike, and once it's secure there, I'll actually torque everything down to spec. I'll probably put the wheel back on before I do the torquing, and before the wheel goes back on, we still got to do the rear sprocket there. So I'd like to get this guy mounted. Then we could at least put the rear stand underneath it just for some extra support. I don't like this thing sitting on the jack stands like it is for too long. So let's go ahead and mount this guy, and then it's off to the rear wheel. All right, and just like that, we have the swing arm all mounted back up, and it is awesome to have spools again. As you can see, it is a lot easier to hold the bike up with the stand in this configuration than having this part here just resting underneath the swing arm. Didn't really like that, and I know that whoever the new owner is will definitely appreciate having spools, and they will be happy that they're not left with a swing arm in that condition. So definitely worth it. And as far as the set screws go, it looks like there's a pair in there right now. We could probably salvage these. I'd like to clean this out just a little bit. Haven't decided if I'm going to keep this sticker here or not. I'll probably, I don't know, I might try to remove it, but we'll see. But I'm very happy with the chain guide, how this all cleaned up. And I'll probably install the chain guard as well. It's a little scratched up, but I could probably polish it and make it look like new again. I need to get my front sprocket and my rear sprocket installed. It's starting to get dark outside, as you can see, so I'm debating whether or not just to call it a night or if I can crank out the sprocket installation real fast. Part of me wants to do it. I was also going to be doing the rear brake assembly as well. So let's see what I can make happen in a short amount of time. All right, so I decided I'm having too much fun and I'm not ready to call it quits for the night. So I've got the chain guard mounted, I've got the rear sprocket mounted and torqued to spec. So yeah, I think I'm gonna do the chain now. So definitely gonna have to install the front sprocket. So I went ahead and swapped out the chain adjusters from the other swing arm because they were a little bit cleaner, kind of wiped down this area a little bit. I'm going to do a final detail once the whole project's done, but for now, just want to get everything mocked up. And I'm also going to be installing the rear brake setup. So the seller provided me with it's a used brake setup, but it's in better condition than the one that came with the bike. So I will be mounting this because it serves as a spacer here along the axle, and gonna have to get that installed when I mount the rear wheel. So I think it's time to go ahead and grab the front sprocket, get that mounted, get it torqued down, or at least get it tightened down by hand. We'll probably do the final torque once the bike is back on the ground again, but I think it's time to see what this chain looks like on the bike. All right, so unfortunately we've run into our first roadblock of the project, and that is that the seller of the chain and sprocket kit accidentally sent me a 46 tooth rear sprocket instead of a 43. So unfortunately, we will not be able to mount the chain tonight. It's probably 1 or 2 links too short with that sort of a gearing setup. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to pull the chain back off, tighten down the axle just for the night, and the whole rear wheel is going to have to come back off again. So Unfortunately, that's just something that happens when you deal with purchases online. So I reached out to the seller. Hopefully they can get me a new rear sprocket that I actually paid for, within the next few days. If not, I may just bite the bullet if they want me to return the whole kit. I'm not going to do that. That's too much of a pain. So especially with that front sprocket, I'm just going to purchase a rear that's the right size. So I should know hopefully tomorrow, and if I don't hear from them, I'll just purchase a new one. I'm not sure if Cycle Gear has any in stock. If they do, that would be nice, because then I could just go grab one and bring it home. But we may have to move on to the next part of the project. So yeah, not the happiest right now, but it is what it is. So we'll go ahead and end the video here. Obviously, I have a lot of cleanup to do. I'm just going to box up the chain and tidy up the garage. Anyways, these things happen. So thanks for checking out the video, and we'll go ahead and wrap up here. And when you see me next time, hopefully we're installing the correct sprocket with the right chain.